Hi, my name is Jonathan,
And I'm Deborah.
and we're here to tell you a little bit more about what we believe. So today we have the honor of having Dr. Lang with us. He's my professor for a few classes. He's my research supervisor as well. And I know he's a very, very smart man. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Dr. Andrew Lang, Chair of Computing and Math. I'm a senior professor of mathematics. I've been here 25 years.
Wow.
Teach mainly math, some physics, a little bit of computing.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
So kind of our line of questioning for today originates from, I'll give you kind of a backstory. So I remember being in Christmas on my bed, scrolling through TikTok, and suddenly I see this TikTok about this new thing called ChatGPT that they just released. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I scrolled, I see another video, I scroll, I see another one and another one. So I'm like, okay, I need to check this out. So I make an account and I start playing with this new thing called ChatGPT, and my mind is blown because I'm like, wow, like I didn't realize artificial intelligence was actually already at a stage like this today. So it blew my mind. And then I remember a few weeks later, Deborah started to get interest. She was like, Jonathan's always talking about this new thing called ChatGPT. So she's like, what is it, Jonathan?
Yeah, I remember when I found out, I was very actually scared because I saw it and I was like, what is this new thing? And it kind of frightened me because I was thinking of even the future of humanity and the workforce and how eventually, like, it seems like this is something that could reach a whole new level of just intelligence, you know? So I was kind of surprised to see how much it knew and how much information we could get out of asking a simple question. And so I am a little bit newer at all of this. I don't know as much as Jonathan would, or obviously as much as you know.
The expert.
The expert. But yes, I'm excited to learn more about this.
Yeah. So I think kind of our first leading question is, how do you think artificial intelligence fits into the world today? Especially like within a Christian worldview, how does it fit into a Christian worldview today?
Okay, good. So the development of AI has been a long time coming. We've seen very specialized applications. You use AI actually every day already. And so when you're texting, you see these little words at the bottom. It's suggesting you're like your next word already.
Yeah.
And so we have AI that can beat any chess player in the world now. So AI has been a long time coming, but this new development with these large language models like ChatGPT is really going to change society. It's sort of, people are calling it like an iPhone moment. When the iPhone came out, everybody has a cell phone. And so with these large language models, it's created kind of an arms race in the high-tech companies. So Microsoft has kind of adopted the ChatGPT model and paid a lot of money, but very soon we're going to get barred from Google. Anthropic AI has a product. Facebook has their own one. And so there's kind of an arms race, and it's going to change society, yeah. So it's not going to replace. So AI won't replace jobs. It's the people who use AI will replace you. So it's really a tool, and people who utilize AI will just enhance what they can do. But AI itself as an autonomous thing, replacing people is not going to be that prevalent, I would say. It might be affect some particular jobs, but really it's going to change the way that people work, not replace them, I think.
Interesting.
And now as a Christian worldview, it's interesting when we look that AIs are susceptible to biases and susceptible to all sorts of things that are unexpected. And many news stories came out and said, well, I managed to make it say this, and I managed to make it say this, right? So it's not that the system is malevolent or anything. It really has no morals because it's a computer. But as for a Christian worldview, there's a potential to have a voice in this arena about how to avoid bias, how to avoid using AI for malicious purposes, because you can use it as a tool for good or as a destructive tool. You can use it to create misinformation. You can use it to create pieces that are biased and, just terrible things. So in a Christian worldview, that's kind of what we want to speak into, is how to use AI morally and ethically, I think.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lang, but right now the AI models that we're using, they're based on probability functions, right? So it's pretty much when you give it a prompt, is giving you the most probable answer based on the data that it has, but it's not really thinking for itself like a lot of people think it is, right?
Yeah, it doesn't think at all. So it's very similar to when you're texting and it's predicting the next word they think that you might need. It will give you like a list of 3. And often you can actually find yourself hitting like several of them in a row when you're texting. Google has one where they auto-complete emails. You can kind of start a sentence and it will actually complete the whole sentence. And so the autocomplete of sentence in Gmail, for example, that's AI. The texting is AI. And these large language models are actually the same thing, the same probabilistic. It's not just predicting the next word, or it's not just predicting how the sentence should end. It's actually predicting the next 100 words or the next 1,000 words. And every time you do it, it's slightly different because it's probabilistic. So it will, each time it does it, it will choose maybe a different word. And then as it goes, a different word can then, because words often appear next to each other. And so if it chooses a different word, then the next word will the probabilities will change. Because the probabilities of this word following this word are different. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think this is pretty agreed upon in the scientific community that there will be a point called technological singularity, maybe 30, 40 years from now, that is a point where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence and then it's autonomous. And at that point, people say it would be irreversible. So it starts, from what my understanding, it starts to teach itself and then it grows by itself. So it's independent from human input, right?
Right. It doesn't need humans to improve anymore. So at some point, artificial intelligence will start designing computer systems for artificial intelligence that are better than any human can design. So artificial intelligence can play chess better than they can play. It will do all sorts of stuff, very specialized tasks. So at some point there'll be intelligence at a level what they'll surpass humans in most everything, which is...
So it becomes kind of its own entity at that point.
No, it's different than becoming sentient, though.
Do you think it could ever become sentient?
Well, that's an interesting question because so there's a couple of worldviews. And so the atheistic worldview says, well, humans are just biological machines. And they're sentient biological machines. So if that's all there is, then why can't we build a physical machine? So you have a biological machine and it's really just chemistry. So why can't you build one out of a computer? Why can't that become sentient just because humans become sentient?
Make it act the same way.
Right. So to an atheist, there's no reason why computers can't actually become sentient. There's a difference between actually becoming sentient and acting sentient. Philosophically, whether we have free will or not, and our consciousness, is it illusionary or something like that? So there's lots of philosophical discussions. From a Christian worldview, it's different though. As Christians, we believe that we're souls. So we have a soul, and there's a spiritual side to the universe that's not taken into account usually. And so from an atheistic worldview, if you have computers that do become sentient, and there doesn't seem from physical view any reason why that can't happen at a certain point, then really humans have created a new form of life. They would consider it to actually be alive. And all sorts of things would go with that, whether they have rights and things like that. For a Christian worldview, we consider other things to be alive, but we don't give them souls, maybe like animals. So there's something about humans that as Christians we differentiate between other forms of life that make human life created in the image of God separated from, say, animals and stuff. So if we were to create life, machine life, then from a Christian worldview, we wouldn't equate that to having a soul or something that's in need of salvation, for example. Just like we don't, witness to our pets.
Yeah.
We wouldn't necessarily, from a Christian worldview, need to witness to AIs. That would be kind of the same thing to me.
That was interesting to me, to be honest, because I think from an atheist's perspective, if I would put myself like from an atheist point of view, I'd be thinking like if I can talk to an AI and interact with an AI exactly the same way that I can with a human being. And I think there are even some experiments now where I saw that a group of scientists uploaded a worm's entire neural system into code. So the worm is alive inside of the computer, like it's acting the same way that it would in real life, but it's within the computer, which is insane. So like it makes you think, if you can do the same thing with like a human brain, what is it that really differentiates? Or I guess the question really is, what is a soul at that point? Like,
yeah, because to an atheist scientist, so from a Christian worldview, we would see this as a simulation. But at a certain point, an atheist might say, well, actually, there's no difference, because they would look at a human from an atheist viewpoint just as a physical, chemical, biological machine that really there's nothing special about that. And so if you consider humans to be alive, they would have the same level of being alive for the computer. That if it was really able to be sentient, could feel emotions. And so even though we could look inside the computer and see, well, the electrons are traveling around the circuit boards, and it's telling me it has emotions, they'll say, well, that's exactly what happens with humans. We can look at the neurons firing and the humans telling me it has emotions, and they'll say there's no difference.
But it's a form of non-biological life, because we were just looking it up a little bit, talking about it. And so biological life has different requirements, like you need to be able to eat, you need to be able to reproduce to be considered a biological being. Just like plants, just like animals, kind of what we're talking about. So this would be a form of non-biological life.
would you call it life, you think, at the point of the singularity or consciousness, sentience and stuff? Would you call it a different form? Because I don't think you could call it really a machine anymore, or it'd be a specific type of machine, right?
Well, it would be a sentient machine. So I would call it alive. And so in biology, when is something alive or not alive? Like a virus is alive? No, because they don't have a metabolism. They need a host and stuff. And so there are this list. It has to have metabolism, has to have adaptation, has to
Respond to
stimuli, has to be able to reproduce. And so scientists are actually working on those as well for mechanical systems. And so there's, in Cornell recently, they have a robot that can reproduce itself. So it's a robot, and it takes these things and it makes another robot.
Wow.
Interesting.
And then that robot, they can take it and it can then make another robot. So you can have robots that reproduce. They have robots that they've put little chemical baths on that is attractive to flies and other insects. And just like the Venus flytrap, the fly that falls into it, it actually digests the fly chemically and it extracts energy. Wow. So this little robot running around actually eats flies, and it gets its energy by eating.
Wow.
So they're actually playing around with these ideas and trying to make something that satisfies this list of what does it mean to be alive, and they're deliberately going after the reproduction and the metabolism. Wow. And it's not unreasonable to imagine some future mechanical device that actually exhibits all the properties of life, not just sentience, but actually the biological list too.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
So kind of to summarize what you're saying is, we can reproduce all these physical attributes. We can make an AI that kind of understands, but there is the biggest differentiating factor is the soul for Christians, right? From a Christian perspective,
right,
is that humans have a soul and they're created in the image of God.
That's the biggest difference for Christians, is the belief that we're created in the image of God, that God breathed life into us and we become a living soul. So that wouldn't be true of an AI, even if it were sentient.
Yeah.
If you go that far, then it's not created in the image of God. It's more created in the image of man, maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting, because for me, it also brought along a lot of questions about, like, what would this mean in terms of God as creator? But if you believe that God has breathed his life into humans, then there is a difference between God creating something and humans using the attributes and the things that he's given us to create something within like his creation, I guess.
Yeah. So from a Christian worldview, you can see AI as another gift actually from God, just like we view medicine. So when God heals somebody, he can do it through natural biology. The body can heal itself, or it can be through doctors and medicine. And that's a gift, I think, from God, or he could do it through miracles. AI is similar. It's another creation. And even though humans have co-created it, if you will, with God, that really it could be viewed as a gift, I think.
Wow. I like that perspective.
Yeah, it is. Like using the intelligence given to us to then create something. Because I guess like from my perspective, it feels a lot like it's humans trying to play God and trying to see like where they can, you know, like be a God kind of in their own consciousness and in their own mind to then create life. And so that's kind of how I had been seeing it versus seeing it as a gift, using the knowledge that God has given us to create things.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective. A lot of the atheist scientists may be trying to do those things, but as Christians, we could say, well, his potential, there's big problems in the world. Maybe we can use AI to help alleviate some of those things, bring some justice to the world.
I like that.
Like what kind of things would AI be able to help with?
So it would democratize education, for example. So the professors here have had discussions about the impact of AI on education and higher education. But a lot of us feel that really we need to use this as a tool to improve student learning. It will, used correctly, it will give access to education to whole areas of the world population that may not have been able to have access to education in the first place. So it will open up education worldwide, I think. And so a lot of professors will, because you mentioned we're going to lose our jobs. AI is just going to do everything. A lot of professors have actually thought about that too. Is there still a need for professors? And so there is, just like there's a need for regular people, the professors that will survive are the ones that use the AI to improve education. So it doesn't replace professors, but we'll use AI to enhance the educational experience, the learning outcomes. And so it can be used for good. And from a Christian world viewpoint, there's an opportunity here, I think. So since it's new, it's lots of things to explore, and I think it's exciting.
Yeah. In terms of the school setting too, something that I was wondering a lot about is less from the professor's perspective and more like on the student's side. Do you think that that's something that's going to remove an aspect of creativity and critical thinking? Because I was thinking like, if you can just type in a prompt and ask AI to write your essay for you, then do you lose a part of your creative thinking because of that?
Potentially, yes. So one thing that higher education has to do is we have to create what's called AI literacy. So this is, we teach quantitative literacy like math, we teach regular literacy, information literacy, all sorts of kind of literacies, core literacies that we want to have students. So a new one that we'll have to be able to teach students is AI literacy, and that is the knowledge and ability to use AI effectively and morally and ethically in the right way. Students, when they try to avoid work, because that's what students like to do it to varying degrees. And so the one that's most sad for professors is when we see a student turn in someone else's work and they've actually even left the other person's name on it. So so it's, and so that's, to me, that's the same level as using the prompt to write the essay, copying, paste, turning that in without even reading it maybe. So that's the same level of here. But most students, I think, if we teach them how to use AI correctly, won't do that. So you can actually use it to, as you go through the process of saying, help me write an outline, give me some ideas, you're actually engaging in the learning process.
Okay.
So the wrong way to use it would be write a 3,000 word essay on this, copy paste it, don't even read it. That's not the way to do it. And students who do that will miss out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there will be students that do that, but they'll miss out.
Yeah.
But the right way to use it is to actually use it as a tool, creative tool. And when you engage with it, you read it, you ask it to improve that part, you read it. Okay, I like this. You're actually reading what you're actually learning. So,
Yeah.
okay.
It kind of comes down to self-discipline, I guess, at the end of the day, and each person's own personal like desire to learn. As like you said, I think people will accept it and be able to move forward with it, or people will use it like to complete the bare minimum tasks, and then they'll be kind of left behind from everyone else who's really trying to like move forward with it.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's a really interesting perspective. Thank you so much, Dr. Lang, for taking the time to do this, I guess, interview with us. We really appreciate it. I think it brings a really interesting perspective to like the questions we've been wondering. We've heard a lot of people wondering similar questions, so I think it brings a really interesting insight.
Cool.
Yeah. So is there any maybe last things you would say, or some advice you would give to someone who looks at something like this and feels fearful of it, like me, for example? Is there something you would say to people who are a bit confused about this whole new idea?
So what are you afraid of? It depends what you're afraid of, really.
Just maybe like from the perspective of a believer, of a Christian, just what would you say to alleviate the fear that this
AI is going to take over, or like this kind of removes the necessity for human beings, or even consciousness, like things like that, like AI reaching consciousness.
Yeah. So most Christians, 99.9%, as this develops over the next 10, 15, 20 years, those fears will go away naturally. And so every new technology that comes out to people who are established, and so to young kids, actually, it's more of something that's exciting. The people who will be most resistive are the old people, because they've had almost a lot of life already, and this new thing comes out, and it's against. So the common phrase is, this is against the natural order of things. And that's really a psychological response to their age. So the young kids actually are excited. The old people are the ones that are most afraid. But there will actually be a future generation, the people that are born where AI is part of everyday society. They'll actually have a hard time imagining a world without AI.
Right.
So for my generation, I mentioned the iPhone. So it kind of, we would used to sit in the back of chapel and we watch the kids on the it's like before the professors got phones, right? All the kids were like texting was really big, even with the push button candy phones, right? Candy bar phones, everybody was starting texting, and the professors had no clue what was going on. But the kids were like, well, this is like really cool, let's play. And so nowadays, children that are born and they have iPads and iPhones, to them, that's normal.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to imagine,
before that.
Right. They had the grandparents telling stories when I was young, right? And the same thing will be true for AI. There'll be initial fear and trepidation, especially for the older people. Younger kids will kind of get excited, and they'll be the ones to actually take it and develop these tools. And the kids that are born into it, it's like, can't imagine a world any way different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I remember when I was younger and I had first discovered YouTube, like to me that was such an abstract concept. Like how could YouTube be a thing? How can you just search something and videos pop up explaining different subjects? And probably like the idea of Google and Safari and computers versus going to the library to search, information for hours. Yeah. So it's just something that we're going to slowly get more used to, and we're just going to adapt with it. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to say thank you guys for watching this video. We really want to challenge you guys to keep challenging what you believe, because there's always a new perspective, like we've just learned today. There's always a new way to see things. So keep challenging what you believe, and we'll see you guys in the future episode.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to engage with us.
All of our contents can be found on the following platforms.
If you enjoy our content, remember to like and comment. Also, if you have a question of your own, you can send it to us through Instagram DMs. We'll try to answer all of the questions to the best of our abilities. All questions will be kept anonymous.
If you found this video helpful, please be sure to share it on your story or to share it with your friends. They might find it helpful too.
See you guys soon!